My husband drained our emergency fund to pay for his sister's dream wedding while I needed urgent surgery. He said, "You can wait. It's her special day." I filed for divorce from the hospital bed and sued his sister for theft. The wedding was canceled, and then I was lying in a hospital bed, an IV taped to my arm, the steady beep of a monitor keeping time with my heartbeat, when I signed my divorce papers. 3 days earlier, my husband had looked me straight in the eye and told me I could wait. Wait for surgery, wait for the pain to pass, wait for the blood in my urine to stop, because his sister's wedding venue needed full payment up front, and her dream day mattered more than my failing kidney. I remember the exact moment my body started shaking, not from fear, but from disbelief. The doctor had been clear. An 8-millimeter kidney stone was blocking my ureter. My kidney was swelling. If it wasn't removed quickly, the damage could be permanent. The word sepsis hadn't even entered the conversation yet. That came later. We had $15,000 in our emergency fund, a separate savings account, both our names on it. I had built it over 5 years, paycheck by paycheck, skipping trips, saying no to upgrades, thinking I was being responsible, thinking I was protecting our future. When I told him the surgery would cost $12,000, I expected concern, maybe stress. Instead, his face went pale. "About that," he said. That's when he admitted he'd taken $14,000 from our emergency fund and given it to his sister for her wedding. Not a discussion, not a warning, just a withdrawal and a justification. "It's her special day," he said, as if that phrase could stop my kidney from swelling inside my body. When I told him I couldn't wait, that I was in constant pain, that I was running fevers and passing blood, he sighed like I was inconveniencing him, like I was being dramatic, like I was selfish for needing my own organs to function. 2 days later, I was rushed into the ER with a fever of 103, vomiting so hard I couldn't stand, my back screaming with pain. They admitted me immediately. Sepsis. Emergency surgery that night. 3 days in the ICU. My kidney barely saved. The bill came to $47,000 before insurance. My husband visited once. He brought gas station flowers and asked if I really needed to make such a big deal about the timing, because the wedding was in 2 days and everyone was stressed. That night, alone in my hospital bed, still shaking from antibiotics and pain meds, I called a divorce attorney. Because in that moment, I understood something with absolute clarity. Anyone who tells you to delay life-saving surgery for a party has already chosen what your life is worth to them. And it isn't much. Before hospitals and lawyers and court dates, there was a version of my life that felt ordinary, stable, safe. I met my husband 5 years ago at a mutual friend's dinner party. He was charming in a quiet way, not loud, not flashy. He listened when people spoke, laughed at the right moments, asked thoughtful questions. When he talked about his family, especially his younger sister, his voice softened. He described himself as the protector, the dependable one, the one who always showed up. At the time, I thought that meant loyalty. We dated for 2 years before getting married. Those years were, on the surface, good. We didn't fight often. We lived within our means. I worked full-time and steadily saved. He made decent money too, but spending never seemed to bother him. If his sister needed help with rent, he sent it. If his parents were short 1 month, he covered it. If there was a birthday, an anniversary, a random celebration, he paid without hesitation. I noticed it. I just didn't question it enough. Whenever I brought up long-term planning, retirement, medical emergencies, unexpected setbacks, he'd smile and say, "That's why you're the organized one." It sounded like a compliment, like we balanced each other out. I didn't realize it was also permission, in his mind, to let me be the only one thinking ahead. The emergency fund was my idea, a separate account, something just for worst-case scenarios. We both agreed on the rules: medical emergencies, job loss, absolute necessity. Nothing else. He nodded when we talked about it. He even thanked me for being responsible. What I didn't know was that he saw that money differently. To him, family wasn't just important. It was untouchable, his sister especially. She was the baby, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose mistakes were always explained away, whose needs always came first. I'd seen it in small ways before, holidays rearranged around her schedule, plans canceled when she needed something last minute, excuses made on her behalf. But I told myself it was normal. Families support each other. That's what people do. The wedding had been a topic for 2 years. Venues, dresses, flowers, guest lists. It was a constant background noise in our lives. Every detail was treated like a sacred obligation. When costs went up, no one questioned whether it was wise. They just asked how to make it work. I remember one night, months before my diagnosis, when he mentioned the venue deposit casually over dinner. It was a huge number. I asked how his sister was managing it. "She'll figure it out," he said. "Worst case, family helps." I didn't think we were included in that sentence, not like that. Marriage, to me, meant partnership. It meant we discussed major decisions. It meant my health mattered as much as anyone else's celebration. I believed that because he had never directly shown me otherwise. Not until my body forced the issue. Looking back, there were signs. The way he dismissed my concerns as overthinking, the way he framed my boundaries as rigidity, the way family first always seemed to mean his family. But love has a way of smoothing over rough edges, of convincing you that patterns are just coincidences, that discomfort is temporary, that things will balance out eventually. I never imagined I'd have to choose between my kidney and my marriage. I never imagined my husband would choose a wedding venue over my life. But when he told me I could wait, when he said it was perfect timing for me to delay surgery so his sister could have her special day, that illusion shattered. What came after wasn't just a medical emergency. It was the moment I realized I had never been his first priority. The diagnosis didn't come out of nowhere. Weeks before everything collapsed, my body had already started warning me. At first it was subtle, an ache in my lower back that came and went, a dull pressure I couldn't quite explain. I brushed it off. Work stress, dehydration, bad posture. I told myself all the same lies people tell when they don't want to slow down. Then the pain sharpened. It started waking me up at night. Not screaming pain yet, just enough to make me shift positions, to press my hand against my side and breathe through it. When I mentioned it to my husband, he barely looked up from his phone. "Probably a kidney stone," he said casually. "Those suck, but people deal with them all the time." People deal with them. That phrase would come back to haunt me. A few days later, I noticed blood in my urine. That got my attention. I scheduled a doctor's appointment. When the scan results came back, the tone changed immediately. No jokes, no casual reassurances. 8 millimeters, blocking the ureter, causing hydronephrosis. My kidney was swelling because urine couldn't drain properly. The urologist explained it slowly, carefully, watching my face as if gauging whether I understood the seriousness. "This isn't something to wait on," he said. "If we don't remove it soon, you're looking at permanent damage." When I told my husband that night, I expected concern, worry, maybe fear. Instead, he went quiet. Not the attentive silence I'd come to associate with listening, but the tight, calculating kind. The kind where someone is already doing mental math, already weighing priorities. That was the first crack. When I mentioned the surgery cost, $12,000 after insurance, and reassured him we had the emergency fund, his reaction wasn't relief. It was panic. His skin drained of color, his jaw tightened. That's when he said, "About that." I didn't know it yet, but that pause, that hesitation, was the moment everything shifted. Before he even admitted what he'd done, my chest tightened. My instinct screamed that something was wrong. When the truth came out, that he'd withdrawn $14,000 without telling me, that he'd given it to his sister for a wedding venue, I felt a strange, hollow calm, like my mind had gone somewhere quiet to protect itself. I asked questions slowly, deliberately, trying to keep my voice steady. "How long ago? When is the wedding? Did you even consider talking to me first?" His answers were defensive, justifications piled on top of each other. He called it a loan, said she'd pay it back after the honeymoon, said he didn't need my permission to help his family. Family. The word felt heavy in my mouth. When I explained, again, that the surgery couldn't wait, that my doctor had been clear, he rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic," he said. "It's just a stone." Just a stone. That dismissal hurt more than the pain in my back, more than the blood, more than the fear creeping into my thoughts at night, because it told me he didn't believe me. Or worse, he didn't care enough to try. He framed it as a timing issue, as if my failing kidney was an inconvenience that could be rescheduled around a party. He talked about stress, about family pressure, about how devastated his sister would be if she lost the venue. Not once did he ask how I felt. Not once did he say, "We'll figure this out." That was the seed. The moment I realized that when forced to choose between my well-being and his family's comfort, he didn't hesitate. He chose them. And from that moment on, everything that followed, every argument, every escalation, every legal document, was already inevitable. Tuesday night ended with tension hanging in the air like something electrical. We went to bed without resolving anything. He turned his back to me, already mentally somewhere else, probably reviewing seating charts and vendor timelines in his head, while I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting my breaths and trying not to focus on the pressure building in my side. By Wednesday morning, the pain was worse. Not unbearable yet, but insistent. It followed me through the day, a constant reminder that something inside my body wasn't right. I drank water until I felt nauseous. I tried to work, but every movement sent a dull spike through my back. When I texted him to say the pain was getting worse, his reply was short. Try to relax. Stress makes it worse. That night, I started running a fever. By Thursday morning, I couldn't keep anything down. Every sip of water came back up. My skin felt hot and clammy at the same time, and when I tried to stand, my legs buckled under me. I remember gripping the edge of the bed, my hands shaking, my vision narrowing. That's when I knew this wasn't something I could power through. At the ER, everything moved fast. Too fast. Nurses hooked me up to monitors. Blood was drawn. Someone asked me to rate my pain, and when I opened my mouth to answer, I realized I was crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silent tears slipping down the sides of my face. The doctor came in with a look that made my stomach drop. "You're septic," he said. "The infection from the blocked kidney has spread to your bloodstream. We need to operate tonight." I texted my husband from the gurney. Short, direct. "They're doing emergency surgery. It's sepsis." He showed up hours later, just before they wheeled me into the operating room. He looked annoyed more than worried, like this was an unexpected inconvenience thrown into an already packed schedule. He squeezed my hand briefly, told me to be strong, then asked the nurse how long the surgery would take. "Because the wedding rehearsal dinner is tonight," he added, as if that detail mattered. I remember staring at him, my mouth dry, my heart pounding, wondering how I'd ended up here, half delirious with fever, about to be put under anesthesia. Listening to my husband worry about a dinner reservation. The surgery saved my kidney. Barely. I woke up in the ICU, disoriented, sore, tubes everywhere. The pain was different now, deeper, sharper, but controlled. Antibiotics dripped into my veins around the clock. Nurses came and went. Time blurred. I spent 3 days there. My husband visited once. He brought me gas station flowers, the kind you grab without thinking, and set them down awkwardly on the tray table. He told me he was glad I was okay. Then, almost immediately, he sighed. "Did it really have to happen this week?" he asked. "My sister's wedding is in 2 days, and everyone's freaking out." I stared at him, my throat tight, my pulse thudding in my ears. "Where do you think we're getting the $18,000? I asked quietly. He shrugged. "We'll figure it out. Payment plan. The important thing is you're fine now." Fine. My body had gone into septic shock. I'd spent days in intensive care. My kidney was damaged, and he was telling me I was fine. When I told him, calmly, carefully, that he'd stolen our emergency fund and nearly killed me, he snapped back immediately. "I did not steal anything. I helped my sister. You're being ridiculous." A nurse in the room froze. Our eyes met for just a second, her expression a mix of disbelief and concern, like she was silently asking if I was hearing what she was hearing. My husband stayed for 20 minutes. Then he said he had to leave for the rehearsal dinner. As the door closed behind him, the room felt impossibly quiet. The machines hummed. My chest rose and fell. My hand trembled slightly against the sheets. That was the moment something hardened inside me. That night, still hooked up to IV antibiotics, I called a divorce attorney from my hospital bed. I explained everything, my diagnosis, the emergency fund, the surgery, the wedding. There was a pause on the other end of the line, but not the shocked kind. "Do you have proof?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Bank statements, text messages, medical records." "Then you have a case," he replied. I signed the retainer paperwork on my iPad, my fingers steady despite the pain. While my husband toasted his sister's rehearsal dinner, I began dismantling my marriage. The morning after I signed the paperwork, I woke up to the dull ache of recovery and the sharper weight of certainty. The antibiotics had brought the fever down, but my body still felt fragile, like glass under pressure. Every breath reminded me of what had happened, of how close I'd come to losing more than a kidney. My hand shook slightly when I lifted the cup of water the nurse set beside me. Not fear, residual shock. the kind that settles into your muscles after your life has been abruptly rerouted. My phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls, text messages, voicemails I didn't listen to. When I finally picked up, it was him. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he snapped the moment I answered. His voice was sharp, controlled anger. No tears, no remorse, just outrage that I had disrupted his carefully planned narrative. "You filed for divorce at my sister's wedding venue?" I kept my voice calm, even. It took effort, but calm felt necessary. "You took our emergency fund while I needed life-saving surgery," I said. "Yes, I'm divorcing you." "You're doing this to ruin her wedding," he shot back. "You're sick." "The timing is coincidental," I replied. "I filed for my hospital bed while you were at the rehearsal dinner." Silence stretched on the line. Not disbelief, calculation. I could almost hear him recalibrating, trying to regain control of the situation. Then his tone shifted. Defensive, lower. "I didn't steal anything. I helped my sister. And now I'm helping myself get out of a marriage with someone who makes everything about herself." I closed my eyes briefly, feeling my heartbeat slow as I grounded myself. I wasn't going to argue emotions. Facts were enough. "You told me to wait for surgery," I said, "while I was passing blood, while my kidney was failing. You chose a party over my health." He exhaled sharply, frustrated. "I hate you." "Okay," I said simply. When I told him my attorney had drafted a demand letter to his sister, return the $14,000 within 10 days or face a lawsuit, his composure cracked. "You can't do that," he said. "My lawyer says I can," I replied. Something about conversion of funds and fraud. He sounded confident. He hung up. 3 minutes later, he called back. Different tone, not tears, pleading urgency. "Please, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll get the money back. I'll talk to her. Just don't ruin her wedding." I felt my jaw tighten. "Her wedding isn't my problem," I said. "My kidney damage is, my $18,000 hospital bill is, and my marriage is already broken." "I made a mistake," he insisted. "I'll make it right." "You told me to wait," I said. "That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice." He tried to argue love, obligation, family. I ended the call and blocked his number. I asked the nurses to restrict visitors. I needed space, physical and mental, to heal without being pressured to minimize what had happened. When I was discharged 3 days later, I didn't go home. I stayed with my brother. The quiet there was different, supportive, no tension humming under the surface. He didn't push me to talk. He brought soup, helped me up the stairs when my legs felt weak, and let me sit in silence when that's all I had. Meanwhile, the fallout began. My attorney moved quickly. Divorce papers were served at the wedding venue during setup. The demand letter went out to my sister-in-law. The venue was notified that the payment they'd received was under legal dispute. My phone lit up again. New numbers this time. His mother, his sister, even his aunt. I didn't answer any of them. Through my attorney, I learned what happened next. When the venue realized the payment was tied to a lawsuit, they froze everything. No setup, no service, no ceremony until the dispute was resolved. Contract clause, standard procedure. The wedding didn't happen. Not that weekend, not the next. I didn't feel joy about that. I didn't feel vindictive satisfaction. Mostly I felt tired. Tired of explaining why my health mattered. Tired of being told to sacrifice quietly. Tired of being framed as cruel for refusing to die politely. When my husband tried to access our joint checking account and discovered I'd already moved my share, half, exactly, nothing more, he accused me of financial abuse. My attorney called it asset protection during divorce proceedings. The difference mattered. I lay awake one night, listening to the hum of the heater, my hand resting lightly over my side. The pain was manageable now, but the damage was done. Permanent, according to the doctors. Still, there was a strange calm settling in my chest. For the first time since all of this began, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. And no matter how loudly they protested, no matter how many times they tried to paint me as the villain, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I hadn't destroyed anything. I had survived it. The escalation didn't come with shouting or dramatic confrontations. It came with pressure. Quiet at first, then relentless. The calls started with his mother. I didn't recognize the number and answered out of habit, still groggy from medication. The tone was sharp from the first word, controlled indignation wrapped in moral certainty. "You need to stop this immediately," she said. No greeting, no concern for my health. "My daughter is devastated. Her sister is hysterical. You're tearing this family apart over money." I sat up slowly, careful not to strain my side. My pulse thudded in my ears, steady but heavy. "It's not over money," I said. It's over $14,000 taken from an emergency fund while I needed emergency surgery. It was borrowed, she insisted. Family helps family. Then family should have helped with my medical bills, I replied. Not a party. She scoffed. A wedding is not just a party, it's sacred. So is marriage, I said evenly. Your son broke that when he told me to delay surgery. Her voice sharpened. You're being vindictive. I'm being accountable, I said. There's a difference. She threatened consequences, lawsuits, family backlash, social fallout. I listened without interrupting, then ended the call and blocked the number. One by one, I blocked them all. My husband stayed with his sister after the wedding was postponed. They moved into a small one-bedroom apartment together, splitting costs they couldn't afford. From what I heard through mutual acquaintances, his paychecks started disappearing into credit card balances and vendor fees that wouldn't be refunded. He tried to patch holes in a sinking ship, but the math didn't work. The stress showed in his behavior, not tears, not breakdowns, but agitation, short temper, snapped responses, accusations. When he found out I'd moved half the money from our joint checking account into a new account in my name, he exploded over text from yet another number. That's financial abuse, he wrote. You're trying to punish me. My attorney laughed when I showed him. Not mocking, matter of fact. You took your half, he said. That's protecting assets. Judges don't like it when someone drains an emergency fund during a medical crisis. They like it even less when that person then accuses the injured spouse of abuse. The divorce moved fast. No children, no shared property beyond basic assets. The apartment lease was in my name. He'd moved in after we married. Clean lines, clear documentation. Still, his attorney pushed for spousal support. Mine pushed back harder. Meanwhile, the lawsuit against his sister gained momentum. The demand letter gave her 10 days to return the $14,000. Instead of paying, she panicked. Called the venue, called vendors, called my husband. When she learned the venue had been CC'd on the legal notice and frozen the account, she lost control. That's when she showed up at my brother's house. I was on the couch, still recovering, watching TV with the sound low when my brother answered the door. I heard raised voices, her insistence, his firm refusal. I need to talk to her, she said. It's important. My brother glanced back at me. I shook my head once. He started to close the door. She wedged her foot in the frame. Please, she said, just 5 minutes. My brother's voice stayed calm, authoritative. You need to leave. That was when she said it, the line that cut through the room like a blade. I'll give the money back. I stood slowly, careful, my movements deliberate. Pain flared briefly, then settled. You'll give back the full $14,000? I asked from behind my brother. Her shoulders slumped. Most of it. I can give $8,000 right now, the rest over 6 months. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I didn't threaten. So you can't give it back, I said. She started explaining how the lawsuit had ruined everything, how the venue wouldn't work with her, how her fiancé's family was asking questions, how his mother now thought she was financially irresponsible. You took $14,000 that wasn't yours for a wedding, I said. You are financially irresponsible. She tried to deflect, claimed she didn't know it was medical money, that my husband told her it was extra savings. And you didn't question why someone would loan you $14,000 interest-free? I asked. She didn't answer. When I told her I needed the full amount immediately to consider dropping the lawsuit, she admitted she didn't have it. I told her the lawsuit would continue. She left crying. My brother closed the door, looked at me, and said quietly, "That was cold." She helped put me in the ICU, I replied. Actions have consequences. He didn't argue. The legal pressure intensified from there. Settlement proposals flew back and forth. My husband's attorney demanded half my retirement account, spousal support, and that I drop the lawsuit against his sister. My attorney countered with documentation. Bank records, medical reports, timelines, texts where my husband admitted taking the money and telling me to wait for surgery. We prepared for court. The escalation wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was procedural, calculated, unavoidable. And as my body healed slowly, scar tissue forming, strength returning in increments, I realized something important. They weren't escalating because I was wrong. They were escalating because for the first time, I wasn't backing down. The darkest moment didn't arrive with a verdict or a phone call. It arrived quietly, late at night, when the house was asleep and my body finally stopped buzzing long enough for my thoughts to catch up. Recovery is strange. People assume that once you're discharged, once the tubes are gone and the monitors are silent, the danger has passed. But that's when the aftermath settles in. The bruised veins, the incision pain that flares when you turn the wrong way, the fatigue that sinks into your bones without warning. And the waiting. Waiting for court. Waiting for numbers to be finalized. Waiting to see how much damage, physical and financial, would be permanent. One night, I sat at the kitchen table at my brother's house, a stack of paperwork spread in front of me. Medical bills, insurance explanations, attorney invoices, payment plans. The numbers blurred together until they stopped meaning anything at all. $18,000 out of pocket. Attorney fees climbing past what I'd hoped. Retirement projections I'd once felt proud of, now looking fragile. For the first time since the ICU, my hands started to shake, not from pain, but from something colder. Fear. Not fear of them, fear of the future. I pressed my palm flat against the table, breathed slowly, tried to ground myself. But the questions crept in anyway. What if the judge sided with him? What if I lost more than I expected? What if all of this, every legal step, every boundary, left me worse off in the end? I thought about the version of myself from a year ago, the woman who believed she was safe, the woman who trusted her husband with shared accounts and shared priorities, the woman who assumed emergencies were hypothetical problems, not lived experiences. That version of me felt impossibly distant. I picked up my phone and scrolled through messages I hadn't answered. Mutual friends trying to stay neutral. His relatives calling me cruel, vindictive, heartless. People who knew the outcome but not the cost, who saw the canceled wedding and not the ICU bed. One message stopped me. It was from a friend I'd known longer than my marriage. Short, direct. I know everyone's yelling, but I see you, and I'm on your side. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, the tightness in my chest easing just a little. Still, the guilt crept in later. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because I knew how this story looked from the outside. A wedding canceled, a lawsuit filed, a marriage ended. People love simple villains, and I fit the role neatly if you ignored the medical charts. There was a moment, just a moment, when I wondered if I should have waited, if I should have swallowed the risk, delayed the surgery, let the wedding happen, and dealt with the consequences quietly afterward. That thought scared me more than anything else, because it meant a part of me was still willing to disappear for the comfort of others. I stood up abruptly, the movement pulling at my incision, and walked to the bathroom. I caught my reflection in the mirror, pale, thinner, eyes sharper than I remembered. Not broken, just changed. I leaned on the sink and said it out loud, just to hear it. I almost died. The words landed heavily in the room. I almost died because someone decided a venue deposit mattered more than my health. That was the truth, stripped of emotion, stripped of narrative. And once I said it, the guilt lost its grip. The dark moment wasn't despair. It was clarity that came too late to be comfortable, but early enough to matter. The next day, my attorney called. Court dates were set. Both the divorce hearing and the lawsuit against my sister-in-law would happen the same week. Different judges, different rooms, no more delays. When I hung up, my heart rate stayed steady. No panic, no dread. Just resolve. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired but certain. Certain that even if the outcome wasn't perfect, even if I lost more than I wanted, I would never again trade my body, my safety, or my life for someone else's convenience. That realization didn't make the nights easier, but it made them survivable. And sometimes in the middle of darkness, that's enough. Court week arrived without drama, which somehow made it heavier. No shouting, no last-minute apologies, just calendars, filing numbers, and the quiet understanding that whatever happened next would be permanent. The divorce hearing came first. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Neutral colors, hard benches, a judge in her 60s presiding with the kind of tired authority that comes from having seen every version of human failure. She didn't look impressed by anyone in the room. My husband sat across from me, jaw tight, posture rigid. He didn't look at me once. No tears, no visible regret, just irritation, like this was another problem he hadn't planned for. Both attorneys presented their cases. His painted me as vindictive, cold, a wife punishing her husband for trying to help his family. They showed selected text messages where my replies were brief, detached, unforgiving. They emphasized the canceled wedding, the lawsuit, the timing. Then my attorney stood. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize anything. He laid out bank statements showing the emergency fund withdrawals, medical records documenting my diagnosis, the obstruction, the infection, the emergency surgery. Text messages where my husband admitted taking the money. Messages where he told me, explicitly, to wait for surgery until after his sister's wedding. The judge read silently for a long time. Then she looked up at my husband. Did you withdraw $14,000 from your joint emergency fund to pay for your sister's wedding? Yes, he said defensively, but it wasn't stolen. It was borrowed. Did your wife require emergency medical treatment at the time? It wasn't an emergency, he started. She was being... The judge cut him off. I have hospital records here indicating septic shock and emergency surgery to save her kidney. That is, by definition, an emergency. Silence. She didn't lecture. She didn't scold. She simply ruled. Marital assets split 50-50, adjusted for contributions, no spousal support. My husband would reimburse his portion of the emergency fund withdrawal. Medical bills would be split 60-40, with him paying the largest share due to his direct actions contributing to the emergency. These are consequences, the judge said flatly, not punishment. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something closer to release. 2 days later, the lawsuit against his sister went before a different judge. She arrived with her fiancé. He looked exhausted. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her attorney argued she hadn't known the money was taken from a medical emergency fund, that she acted in good faith. My attorney presented text messages where she questioned whether my husband was okay with the withdrawal and accepted the money anyway after being reassured he'd understand once he saw how happy she was. The judge's patience wore thin quickly. Community property does not mean unilateral gifting without consent, he said, especially when funds are designated for a specific purpose. He ruled in my favor. $14,000. Court costs. Interest. Payment plan enforced immediately. Her fiancé put his head in his hands. Outside the courthouse, he approached me. This is going to bankrupt her, he said, anger edged with desperation. She took money that wasn't hers, I replied. That nearly cost me my life. She didn't know. She didn't ask. He didn't argue after that. That was the turning point. Not because I won, but because the narrative finally matched reality. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. I wasn't dramatic. I was a woman who refused to be quietly sacrificed for someone else's celebration. When I went home that night, I didn't replay conversations. I didn't rehearse comebacks. I didn't feel the need to justify myself to anyone. I lay down, one hand resting over my side, feeling the steady rhythm of a body that had survived something it shouldn't have had to. For the first time since the diagnosis, I slept without bracing for the next blow. The fallout wasn't loud. It didn't arrive in waves of screaming or dramatic public scenes. It unfolded quietly, methodically, like gravity finally asserting itself after months of suspension. The divorce finalized first. Paperwork signed. Orders issued. Assets divided. No ceremony. No closure speeches. Just signatures and a judge's final stamp. My husband left the courthouse without looking at me. His attorney looked frustrated. Mine looked satisfied, but unsurprised. On paper, the outcome was clean. I kept my full retirement account. He owed me reimbursement from the emergency fund after the adjustments. He was responsible for the larger share of the medical bills. No spousal support in either direction. In reality, it felt heavier. I didn't walk out feeling victorious. I walked out feeling emptied, like something diseased had been removed, but the body still needed time to recover. 2 days later came the lawsuit's consequences. His sister's payment plan began immediately, $400 a month, garnished if she missed a payment. She cried in the courtroom. Her fiancé stood stiffly beside her, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't look at her the way someone looks at a future spouse. He looked at her like a problem he hadn't agreed to inherit. Outside, he confronted me again. "You got what you wanted," he said. His voice wasn't pleading now, just angry. "Can't you let this go?" I met his gaze calmly. Why would I? Because you're ruining our lives. She helped ruin my kidney, I said evenly. Your fiancé's brother nearly killed me. He had no response. He turned and walked back to her. The ripple effects spread fast. The wedding, postponed once, quietly disappeared from calendars. Vendors refused to rebook until payments were cleared. Family members stopped asking when and started asking why. Questions piled up. Stories changed. Inconsistencies surfaced. The fiancé left within weeks. Apparently, learning your future spouse took $14,000 without consent and got sued for it raises concerns about judgment and trust. Who knew? She moved into a one-bedroom apartment with my ex-husband. 2 adults sharing a space that had never been meant for more than one. tension replacing celebration, financial stress replacing champagne toasts. My ex-husband's situation deteriorated quickly. His paychecks vanished into debt, credit cards he'd maxed trying to fix things, payments to vendors who refused refunds, shared rent he hadn't planned for. He tried to access our old joint account again and found it closed to him. He accused me of cruelty through mutual friends. I didn't respond. He sent one final text from his mother's phone. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed everything." I blocked the number without replying. Meanwhile, my life shrank and stabilized. I moved into a small apartment. 1 bedroom. Quiet. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. No shared accounts. No explanations required. I signed the lease myself, my name alone on the paperwork, and felt a strange sense of relief in that simplicity. Work was understanding. Medical leave had slowed things down, but my boss didn't question it. When he heard the full story, he shook his head and said, "That's unbelievable." Then he bought me lunch and told me to take my time easing back in. The medical bills didn't vanish. They never do. 3 months have passed since the court rulings. Long enough for the noise to fade. Long enough for the adrenaline to wear off. Long enough for life to settle into something quieter and real. The payment plan started on time. $400 a month, every month, pulled directly from my former sister-in-law's wages. She's barely keeping up. Second job, no wedding, no fiancé, just consequences she didn't expect when she accepted money that wasn't hers. My ex-husband paid his portion too, slowly, reluctantly, without apology. He tried to reach out once through a mutual friend, asking if we could talk like adults. I told the friend we already had, in court, with lawyers, very adult. The medical side of things is manageable. The damaged kidney will never fully recover, about 40% function loss, permanent. The other one compensates well enough that I can live a normal life, but it's damage that didn't have to happen. Damage caused not by bad luck, but by someone else deciding my pain could wait. That's the part I still sit with sometimes. Not anger, not grief, clarity. I live alone now. Small apartment, quiet mornings, no shared accounts, no negotiations about whose family matters more. I adopted a cat and named him Kidney. Dark humor helps. Therapy helps too. My therapist says I have every right to be angry, but also reminds me not to let this define the rest of my life. We're working on that, slowly, intentionally. My family supports me. My brother still checks in. My parents don't mention my ex-husband's name anymore. My mother refers to him as the man who told you to wait for surgery. It's not subtle, but I appreciate the loyalty. As for his family, they hate me. Blocked everywhere. Blame me for everything. That's fine. Their narrative requires a villain, and I'm done trying to audition for forgiveness I don't need. People have asked if I regret how I handled it. If I regret filing for divorce from a hospital bed. If I regret suing his sister. If I regret standing my ground, even when everyone told me I was being cruel. No. I regret trusting someone who thought a wedding venue mattered more than my body. I regret ignoring the early signs that family first didn't include me, but choosing myself, protecting my life, refusing to be quietly sacrificed. No regrets there. Here's the lesson, if there is one. If someone tells you to delay life-saving surgery for a party, believe them when they show you who they are, and then leave, before they cost you more than you can afford to lose. I'm done with this chapter. I survived it, and I'm moving forward, stronger, clearer, and fully aware of what I will never tolerate again. I'll see you in the next video, and in the meantime, take care of yourself. Payment plans replaced panic. Numbers became manageable instead of overwhelming. I adjusted my budget, cut back where I could, took control where I needed to. My kidney, though, reminded me daily that this wasn't just paperwork. 40% function loss in the affected kidney. Permanent, according to my doctor. Manageable, yes, but avoidable. A preventable outcome if surgery hadn't been delayed. That knowledge settled into me slowly. Not rage, not despair. Resolve. My ex-husband tried to show up once. Stood outside my new building, buzzing apartments he couldn't access. I didn't open the door. I called the non-emergency police line and reported trespassing. An officer explained his options to him calmly. He left. That was the last time I saw him. Friends asked how I was holding up, some cautiously, some openly supportive. Others disappeared entirely, uncomfortable with the idea that boundaries have consequences. I didn't chase them. The fallout taught me something no courtroom ever could. When you stop absorbing damage quietly, people will accuse you of causing the explosion. When you refuse to sacrifice yourself for someone else's comfort, they'll call you heartless. When you hold others accountable, they'll claim you're cruel. But consequences don't care about optics. They arrive anyway, and this time they didn't land on me alone.